Hi guys, so welcome back to another tutorial in the Bug Tracker series. Today we're going to be implementing part of our backend and getting the API up and running. We're going to be testing the API with a program called Postman. You can use other ones like Insomnia, but I prefer Postman because it saves everything nicely. So let's make a new folder, call it Backend. And we will cd into the backend folder. So if we go npm init, we'll enter until we get to entry point, and we'll just type in server.js and enter on the rest. And then we're going to install a couple packages, so npm I, and we'll install Express for our server. Cause, which is cross-regional communication. It basically allows us to talk to the same server without having put any headers in the requests. We're going to do .env. We want mongoose because that's what I'm going to be using for our database. We're going to want cookie. What is it? Cookie hyphen parser. And I think that is it. So we install that. And whilst that's installing, we'll make a new file, call it server.js. And because we're not using ES6, we've got to import it the old way with constants, or lets. So constant express equals require express. And then we're going to have another constant which is app. We need to initialize the express server into it. Whilst we're here, we'll bring in cause. And right at the top, it's the most important, we've got to initialize it as early as possible. So we're going to require, and we'll require .env .config, and that just configures the environment variables we'll be using a little bit later on. And we will bring in cookie parser. Okay, so now we've got that. We want to set up our basic Express server. So if we make a constant and we'll call it port. Now, it depends on where you host it. Most of them don't allow you to set your own port. They'll set it on startup, so we need to allow them to set their own port. So we'll go process.env, so it grabs the environment variable. We'll go port, and we'll go or 3500, and that's because if we run it on our local machine, it will choose port 3500. And if we go app.listen, and we'll pass in the port, and this will take a callback, so do an arrow function, and we'll just say console.log listening on, and then we'll go on port, so we can see what it's doing. So if we go, we're going to start, so if we start the server, now I'm going to use NodeMon, so you can install NodeMon just by going npm I, and it's NodeMon, M-O-N, and what that does is it restarts the server every time it detects a save or a change in the server, so you don't have to keep rerunning it. If you don't want to use it, you can just go node and then type in server.js, but I'm going to go NodeMon server.js. And you'll see our server is now running and listening on port 3500. So we need to bring in and initialize a couple middleware inside of the server. So first things we want to do is we do app.use, and we're going to use the express.url encoded, and this is a function, and inside of that we are going to do extended true, and this basically passes our requests so we can actually read them. And then we're going to do app.use, and we're going to use cookie parser, and we're going to do the same thing with cause, and save that. You'll see it's already automatically restarting on a save. So that is our server setup. We need to define the routes for the server, so it knows exactly where to direct its requests that's coming in. So if we make a folder, and we'll call it routes, and we're going to set up the authentication route in this tutorial, so auth.js, and inside auth.js we'll make a constant and we'll call it route, and this is required from express, and it'll be .root at the end, router, sorry, and that's a function. And then we want to go root, and root is our, so you want to go root, and then we'll go dot post, and inside some quotations is going to be the endpoint of the root. So we're going to go / user, comma, and inside some brackets we'll be passing standards request and response or result, and it's an arrow function, and then we'll do root dot put. Put is for update, and inside them quotations we'll do the exact same endpoint, request result, and then the user won't be able to delete for now. The admin can do that later on, but and then we're going to do another post, which would just be to / and that'll be request result. Now this you can caption if you want. That's for logging in, that's for creating the user. And then we're going to want one more, which is a get, and we'll get at / request response. So we need these to do some things, and the first things we need to do is we need to make a model so we can actually communicate with our database. So if I make we'll organize this the same way as our last one. So model controller, we're not going to have any views because it's our API, so we'll put routes into controller, and then inside model we're going to make a user model.js, and we're going to have to bring in mongoose, require mongoose, and then we're going to make a constant and call it schema, and this equals mongoose.schema, and inside there we're going to define what the user is going to be. So we're just going to be a name, and it will be a string, a password, that'll be a string, and we're going to have role, which will also be a string. And we need to create the model from the schema, so we'll make a constant model, and this will be mongoose.model, and this takes two things. So we'll take a name of the model, so we'll call it user. Now anything in caps inside mongoose will automatically convert that to a plural, so it'll be users rather than user. Then we'll go comma, we'll pass in the schema. And the last thing we've got to do is module.exports equals model to export it from here. And then let's bring it into our root, use a model, and then now we've got that, we will set up the create. So to create something in the database, we'll go user model dot create, and then we need to pass in a couple of things. And when we send our object or our body over the request, it's going to be in the exact format of the model. So we'll have name, password, role, and as long as it's all set like that, we can just pass in the request or body. And then this is a callback. Request.body. And then you can either use a callback or a promise. I'm going to use promise. So then, and we'll put so dot then, and inside we're going to do an arrow function and pass the user. We're going to go if no user has returned, then we're going to return res, so that's a response going back from the server, and we're going to go status and go 400.send, and we'll send back there was an error. If it doesn't, then we're going to go res.send. The status will be 200 because we're just sending back a correct response. So then we'll just go created user. And then let's do a catch, pass in an error, and we're going to go res.status 400.send, and we'll send back the error that the user gets. So for the put, we're going to destructure the request.body, and we're going to want to get out the name, password, and role. But we're also going to be passing in the ID of the user. So let's get the ID out as well. And now we need to find the user in the database and update it. So we're going to use the user model dot find by ID and update. And then we'll pass in the ID, and the callback is going to give us the user. It'll be the old version of the updated user, not the new version, but we're not going to use it, so it doesn't matter. If you do want to use it, you've got to pass in an option, but don't worry about that. So if there's no user returned, then we're just going to return res.status 400.send no user. Otherwise, return send result send updated, and then we'll catch it. If error and we'll send the error back. So now we're getting the updates. Oh, close that. Okay, so login. Now, in a production app, you should be hashing the passwords or hash and salt so they're actually encrypted on the database. I'm not going to teach you how to do this in this tutorial. I'll have another tutorial on how to do that separate from this series. For now, just for simple purposes of this tutorial, we're just saving it as plain text, which should never be done in an application that you're actually going to use. But for our purposes, to make our lives easier, we're going to do it. So we're going to get the user model, find one, and we're going to pass in the request.body, and that's going to find any user with the parameters inside there. So it's going to be the username or email address and password that's going to find. And then we'll go then, and we're going to get the user back. If no user, then return. Make sure you return, because if you don't return, it's going to carry on past this if statement, unless you're going to do if and else, which isn't ideal. No. Let's go incorrect email password. And then else, we are going to res.send, and we're just going to send back a ball, which is going to be true. Now, because we're getting the user, we are going to want to save the user's data for future requests. So before the res.send, if we do res.cookie, I'm going to save it as a cookie. So we need to give it a name, so we'll just say user, and we'll pass in the user that's been returned, and that will serialize it into a cookie on the client, and we'll catch it. If error res.send. Actually, I'm just going to make our lives easier and just do res.send status 400. No. Res.status 400.send error. Oh, missing my bracket. So that is logging us in. So now we need to get all the users, and we'll be using that to list it for when they're creating the bugs. So if we get the user model, and we're going to find, and we're going to pass in no query because we want to find all of them. So then we'll get the users back. If no users, return res.status 400.send no users. Otherwise, res.send, and we're just going to send back all the users that's been returned as a JSON. And then we'll catch it. Sorry about the repetitiveness. Okay, so that is our routes for our authentication. So if we save that, now at the moment it's not linked to our server. So back in our server.js, we need to set up this as a route, and to do that we'll go app.use, and then we need to define what the path is going to be before it gets passed into there. So for now we're just going to put we'll do /auth. So I'll go /auth, go into here, and it will find /auth, /user, or /auth on its own. And then we need to require the file, so it knows what file it's actually going to go in. Routes auth. So now the app and the server knows what to do. So if we save that, and we're getting an error, what are we getting? Oh, sorry, in auth.js, I haven't exported the root. So export the root. We've got no errors, and that's all good. Now we can't use it at the moment because we haven't logged in to Mongoose and we haven't imported it. So if we import Mongoose into our server.js, Mongoose, okay. So now we've got Mongoose. We need to connect to the MongoDB database. And to do that, we're going to make a constant. No, we won't actually, I lied. And to do that, yeah, we'll make a constant. So to do that, we'll go mongoose.connect. And this takes a URL, which I'll pass in at the beginning. It takes options, and then it takes a callback of error. And for the callback, if no error, console.log. Connected to database, and we'll return it so it doesn't pass through. Else console.log error, and we'll just log the error. So this can't connect because we need a URL. Now you can either save it in here, but we're going to save it in a .env file, so it doesn't get uploaded to any GitHub or anything like that. So if you just go .env, has to be called .env, and then we'll go database underscore URL equals, and we've got to set the URL there. Now we need to get the URL. So if we go to MongoDB and create an account, I've already got one. I'm going to sign in. So if we create a free cluster, once it's created, go to connect your application, and you'll get a link down here. So if we copy the link, and we will paste that in here. Now we've got to change a couple things. So we've got the database name. We'll set that to bug tracker. And we need to change the username and password now. I've set test user, and for security reasons the password is exactly the same. Not really joking, you shouldn't never do that. Test user. And then save that and go to our server.js and save that. We're getting an error. Why am I getting it? Oh, sorry. And then on the Mongoose connect, we will go process.env dot, and then whatever you call the variable, so database underscore URL. Save that. And now we should be getting 2 errors. Well, warnings, sorry, because they're deprecated. And this is because Mongoose is slightly outdated compared to the MongoDB drivers. So we need to pass in these 2 errors. So if we just copy this, warnings, and paste it into our options, and we'll grab the second one and paste that. So if we save, we should get no errors, and we're connecting to the MongoDB database. So that is going to be it for our API. But if we go into Postman, we'll create a new tab, and we'll do HTTP localhost .3500 for the port, /auth/user. So that is the create part, and we're going to post because we need to create our user before we actually do anything. Now we're going to post it as URL encoded, which is what we've set the app up to be able to pass. So if you have a look in our user model, we need name, password, and role. So the key, let's do name, password, and role. Now if they're admin, it's just going to say admin. Do my name and test user. Now if we send that, you see the user has been created. So now we can post the /. We'll delete that, and let's make the password incorrect. So just test use, send, cannot post. Oh, sorry, auth /. There you go, incorrect email or password. Put the R back in, and we're getting a return true, and we're getting a cookie for user returned, which is all the information serialized. As you can see, it says admin, role, etc. And then if we get all the users, so we can just turn all that off. We're now getting the user returned. Sorry, that was one I did earlier. We're now getting a user returned. So if we want to update this, because we don't want the password to be that, we'll get the ID and we'll paste in the ID. And then we want to put, I'm pretty sure we set up as user, yeah, user to update. So user, and we've got to paste in all of that, and we're going to change the user to new test user. Send that. The user has been updated, and we'll get the users back just so you can see it's been updated. Oh, that's my bad. Because they're not updating, we actually haven't passed in what's being updated. So after ID, what an idiot, we need to pass in what's actually being updated in some curly brackets. So we're going to do name, password, and role. Save that. Let's go and put that again. We get an updated. We'll get all the users back, and there you go. Now we're getting everything updated. So that's it for our authentication API. In our next tutorial, we'll be setting up how to create the bugs into our database and update, delete, do all the crud like we've done today. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, or at least learned something new. If you have, please like and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next and upcoming videos.